okay, the Fed is going to have to ease pretty soon, which normally would be good for Bitcoin. And we've got that's going to cause inflation, which also would be good for Bitcoin. And we've got these ETFs coming online. And, we have to remember cryptos, Bitcoin and Ethereum, at least together, are not that big of a market. If you take the whole crypto universe, it's pretty good size. But for the two main coins, it's not that big. So if a lot of generalist money flows into these ETFs and they have to buy, I don't want to say physical Bitcoin and physical Ethereum, because that's not how that works.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, John Rubino is with us. John, we've had conversations about gold and silver. It's almost 13 years now, if you could believe it. And it's always been kind of the same conversation, except today, right?
Hey, Kerry. Yeah, well, there's been some thrills and chills in the precious metals market in the last week. Gold finished at an all-time monthly high, and overnight, just last night, it broke through 2,100 before getting smacked back down. So basically, now it's a question of support and resistance, because traders, humans, like big round numbers. So we tend to cluster for our buying and selling at the big round numbers. And so for over the past 3 or so years, gold has gotten up to 2,000, which is the biggest of big round numbers in gold's history. And each time it's gotten smacked back down because so many sales came in. And I posted a thing on Substack a while ago about gold resistance is finite. And the idea is that eventually, if you keep trying the big round number where there's resistance, eventually you soak up all the selling, and then you could break through. And then the old resistance becomes support. So that's what we got to see next with gold was, whether it drops back down to 2,000 and then bounces off of that on its way up to 21 or 2,200. And if that's true, if that happens, then we're in a bull market, because what used to be resistance is support, and there's no real resistance before 2,500 in terms of psychologically important big round numbers. So it'll be a hell of a ride if that happens. And we could find out this week, at least... or actually, we could find out today. Gold is getting whacked today. Mm-hmm. And if it drops to 2,000 and bounces off, then my thesis is supported. And we should expect a nice long run from there.
Well, I'm going to go out on the line and say this is 2011 on steroids. Remember 2011?
2011 and the years that followed were life-changing experiences for me. So yeah, I remember 2011. Definitely.
Well, everything that happened then is, look, I knew when the crash hit, and it really hit, and gold went down under 1,000. That's when I was buying, and I was buying silver $6 to $8 an ounce. And I never bought any more after that. A couple of little bits here and there. I bought some war nickels just to prove that you could buy silver for less than its melt value, because the war nickels at the time, those were nickels produced during World War II. They didn't have any copper or nickel in them. They just had silver, and they're 35% silver, and they were selling below their melt value. And I just did that to prove that it could be done. $200 worth on eBay. But this seems to me, now I could be wrong, but I think we're getting to the back up the truck moment. I think we will have a pullback here, and they'll drive it below 2,000. So everybody will say, gold, it faked us out again, another head fake. And that's when it goes. And maybe 1,800 is that bottom. I don't know.
Well, yeah, there are macro reasons why that's very reasonable. And that is because we're heading into a recession right now. People... or the third quarter GDP readings were really strong. They were like 5% annualized growth. And then after that, every macro indicator that you can think of, and a bunch that you probably have never heard of before, all turned negative. And so now we're probably in a recession. And the way that works with the equities markets is they tend to have a relief rally when the Fed stops tightening, but then we see why the Fed stopped tightening. Corporate profits plunge, stocks plunge, and then the Fed starts easing. And stocks really drop during the time of the first couple of eases. So, if that's the first half of the next year that we're looking at, then that's probably bad for precious metals. They'll get sucked down with everything else. So we could indeed see $1,800 again. But that would be a prelude to the Fed having to panic cut. And then, like you said, it's 2011 on steroids, because same basic macro setup, but the numbers are all exponentially worse. So everything that hit in 2008, 2009, 2010 to panic the Fed into easing will be much, much worse this time around. The banks will get hit harder. Real estate will just collapse. And that's what it looks like is happening now. Junk bonds, forget it. Anything else you could think of will be heading south in a hurry. So that's very possible.
Hey.
And if it happens, you want to be short the stock market, and then you want to be buying precious metals when it gets down into, like you said, 18 or change, something like that.
And so one theory, and I don't remember if you and I explored it or not, is that gold actually, the price goes up when interest rates go up, interestingly enough, because banks make loans generally when they get more money, and when the interest rates were low and they got their guaranteed 1% from the Fed parking their excess reserves there, no incentive to make loans, no growth of the monetary supply. Now, on the other hand, we know that the velocity of money has been in the pits, but the base M0 skyrocketed from the pandemic, and the banks are like, besides the banks that are going out of business, the other banks, the majors, are sitting on tons and tons of cash. And they're still, I don't know about you, I'm still getting credit card offers, and they're still making car loans, less mortgages evidently, but that's a function of demand, not a function of supply. So will higher rates lead to higher gold prices? So far, the answer is yes.
Well, the relationship between gold and interest rates depends on why interest rates are moving. It can work either way, actually, because in the 1970s, interest rates went up and gold went up, but interest rates were going up. They were actually both going up because inflation was running out of control. And so that was gold moving in response to inflation, not interest rates. And then post-Great Recession, interest rates went down and continued to go down for a really long time. But gold went up for a while, went up into, it peaked in, I think, 2011, and it could be 2012.
Right.
But it was 1900 and change, right around there. But interest rates had been falling for quite a while.
June of 2011, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe September, because I literally started doing this full time, expecting gold to take off to the moon, and 3 months later it had peaked. So I remember those lessons only too well.
So, yeah, and so after 2011, interest rates continued to fall, but gold fell too, because everybody perceived that we might be in a depression, and the Fed was going to have no choice but to ease like crazy, and so falling interest rates were good for gold in that case. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but I think that in the coming few years, the Fed might have to ease really aggressively. And they might have to go back to QE on steroids and push interest rates down because the economy is imploding. And that would probably be really good for gold and silver. So they would benefit from falling interest rates, and from the perception that eventually that's going to cause inflation, and from the perception that we're bankrupt financially and there's no choice but to devalue the dollar on a massive scale. It could be a perfect storm for gold at some point in the not too distant future. And that's that's what we want to be in this market for. This, it's going to go to $2,500 an ounce. That's fine. That's okay. But it's the discontinuity with gold and silver and the dollar that I think is going to be really interesting when we have the monetary reset and all of a sudden gold is $10,000 an ounce. That's what we're holding on for. And I think we're closer to that than we've ever been before.
Agreed, definitely. Hey, not to mention Bitcoin's back over 40,000. That's a surprise to me, but is it purely a result of the ETFs, or is this flight to perceived safety? Is Bitcoin really a safe haven asset now?
Well, we might already be having the perfect storm for Bitcoin because we've got the, the Fed is going to have to ease pretty soon, which normally would be good for Bitcoin. And we've got the, that's going to cause inflation, which also would be good for Bitcoin. And we've got these ETFs coming online. And, we have to remember cryptos, Bitcoin and Ethereum, at least together, are not that big of a market. If you take the whole crypto universe, it's pretty good size. But for the two main coins, it's not that big. So if a lot of generalist money flows into these ETFs and they have to buy, I don't want to say physical Bitcoin and physical Ethereum, because that's not how that works, but they have to load up on Bitcoin and Ethereum, it could be that is a significant new source of demand that sends these guys up dramatically. And maybe they're anticipating that. This might be the crypto market front running the generalist cash that comes in. So, so we don't know where it tops out, but right now it looks very positive for cryptos because of the immediacy of these of ETFs that are coming along.
Yeah, it could make all the difference and probably makes it very easy to manipulate, because there has to be a lag time between when you buy the crypto and when the trade actually goes through, where the crypto, your dollars get converted to crypto, right? In the ETF.
I don't know how that's going to play out.
They're open-ended, so theoretically they keep buying more and more crypto as more funds flow into the fund, right?
How some ETFs work is that they have a net asset value. And when demand goes up, and that pushes the price of the ETF's stock up above the net asset value, they sell more shares and then go out and buy at basically net asset value. And that increases, marginally increases the net asset value. So when the underlying asset is very popular, that's when these ETFs grow. And that's when they take more of the underlying asset off the market. So what there's a good chance of happening is that people will buy these ETFs without looking at the net asset value. They'll be like, okay, here's an ETF where I can buy cryptos with a mouse click. Let me buy some.
Yeah.
And then the ETF goes to a 20% premium over net asset value. And then they issue a bunch of new shares, use the proceeds to buy a bunch more Ethereum and Bitcoin, and that pushes the price up even further. So you get kind of a perpetual motion machine until people figure out that, hey, this thing is 30% over net asset value. That's not a good deal, and they stop about it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these things function and what effect they have. And there's just so many other things going on that affect crypto and perceptions, larger markets for it. So we're going to have to see. What about what's going on in the Middle East? They're like shooting missiles at our ships, not hitting them, but they're hitting commercial ships.
Yeah, now we have to see just how evil the people running the U.S. are. And we know they're somewhere on the evil scale, but if they are way out there on the bloodthirsty psychopath side, then basically they're going to stage a false flag attack like they did for Korea and like they did for Vietnam. They blow up one of their ships and say, oh my God, Iran just nuked our ship, something like that. And they're going to use that as... Yes, they're going to use that to get into this war that they really want. Because I think there are, more than a few people in the U.S. government who would love a U.S. Israeli alliance that goes out there and destroys all our perceived enemies in the Middle East. Just, one big year of knockdown, drag out, technological warfare. And we are in Tehran We've taken over Iran, got all their oil, and we've wiped out everybody else who looks like they're in our way, like Syria. And it wouldn't be a surprise if that's something that they're planning. So pray that there's somebody who's sane in the room with these guys and says, no, you can't do that.
No, there's no sane people left in D.C. They've all been deported to other parts.
Yeah, but anyhow, so we don't know at this point. When the government says our ships are being fired on, we honestly don't know what's happening, because it might be real, or it might be made up, or it might be they shot one little homemade missile and we're going to blow up a battleship of ours to pretend it was a major league Iranian high-tech missile. So we'll see. We can't trust the people in charge. So we should not believe what they say. So whatever happens out there, verify. Find out if there's anybody out there who's a whistleblower who's willing to come forward and talk about this.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're going to find out fairly soon what the deal is here, because it looks like it's heating up for sure. And that, combined with next year being a recession year, they need to do something, huh?
Well, and it's not just a recession year, it's an election year.
Yeah.
So if you can't run on the economy, you start a war, and or have some other kind of big scandal. It could be that they, like the old saying goes, I think it was Huey Long in Louisiana who used to say, if you want to get me, you have to catch me with a dead girl or a live boy, or something like that. So maybe a scandal at that level that they use against the Republican nominee a week before the election, and that satisfies them. They don't feel like they need a war after all. So we'll see. But you combine a big recession with a presidential election with a bunch of psychos running the show, and basically anything could happen. So my God.
Okay, so what about this election? You think RFK is going to be in it to the end?
You know what? RFK has made it a three-man race, and which adds a really interesting flavor to this, because this is, RFK is in the high teens, low 20s right now in polling. And this is before debates. But if you heard RFK speak, right? So what happens when he's standing next to Biden on a stage and they're discussing world affairs and public policy? I mean, he might. You never know with debates how they're going to go. But it's completely possible that RFK holds his own with Trump, because they were talking about different things, and obliterates Biden. So they come out of it, with a two-man race, let's say. And at that point, Biden has to, quote unquote, have a health emergency. And then Gavin Newsom has to step up. And if that happens with a couple of months before the election, boy, that's going to be a unique thing. We've never had that happen before.
That's like what happened in New Jersey. If you remember, what was his name? It began with a T, an Italian guy. The senator, he got indicted, and then Frank Lautenberg just jumped into his position and won. So there's precedent for it, but not at a national level. But hey, what about...
Here,
yeah.
Let me interrupt, because there's one more thing about this election thing is, it's possible that Trump gets convicted of something while all of this is going on. So you got a convicted felon, somebody who is, one exciting moment away from a stroke, and RFK, who doesn't even have Secret Service protection, Kennedy,
two attempts. I mean, they won't do it.
Yeah, so this could be, an absolutely unique election with stuff going on that has never happened before, and hopefully will never happen again.
Okay, so what about the debate with Gavin Newsom and DeSantis? It looked like, I didn't watch the debate. I don't watch them but this one actually looked like a real debate, didn't it?
Well, I mean, this has two sitting governors of major states arguing about stuff, which I think is just inherently interesting, because they have two different philosophies of governance, two sets of policies and everything. So I didn't watch the debate either, but I think because of the nature of the policies that are being debated, that could possibly have been interesting. I don't know. They didn't get very good reviews. And there was, there was sort of a consensus on the news sites that I was looking at. In other words, the legit news sites, not the cable news guys, that either governor won. They both scored some points. Neither one of them it looked exactly presidential, but it was a non-event from a presidential campaign standpoint, but it was probably better than the Republican debates that they've had so far.
Yeah, definitely.
Still my favorite guy is still Vivek Ramaswamy as far as political theater goes. He's by far the most fun guy to watch. Mm-hmm. And who knows? He's so young now that he could easily be like chief of staff for a president or something like that, and then come back and run with a little bit of government experience. And actually, he might actually be a president at some point, which at this point I think would be cool. It won't happen this time around, but sometime while you and I are still doing interviews, Kerry, I think it's completely possible that we have a President Ramaswamy.
Yeah, well, they're all actors, So Trump was the only real candidate because there was no grooming, there was no, positioning, marketing. Like, remember that movie, The Selling of the President, I think it was? It was a book about 40, 50 years ago. And basically they sell a president like they sell dog food, Only absolutely the dog food is probably more beneficial.
Well, you could make the case that Trump is just a higher level marketer so that it doesn't look like there's marketing going on. He's the guy who, with no filter, who says what he thinks and is going to, and makes all these really grandiose promises. That could be a brand, could be a thought out brand. Although I actually don't think so. I think Trump literally doesn't have a filter.
Yeah.
And he actually is saying what he thinks in any given moment, So, but yeah, it could be that he's a convicted felon who gets elected president, which that alone, leave all the other stuff aside, that right there is pretty unique, So 2024 is shaping up as a existentially threatening year that if it doesn't involve a nuclear war might be just hilarious. This just might be a lot of fun to watch. So we'll see.
Remember Dr. Strangelove was funny too,
Well, Henry Kissinger just died. So that's another eerie kind of coincidence there that the guy who Dr. Strangelove was modeled after just kicked.
That's right. I forgot he was after that. So, hey, well, we won't have any more entertaining movies like that again because we just can't laugh about the bomb anymore. It's just not funny anymore now that so many countries have it. Well, I think we'll leave it at that. Make sure you go over to John's work at rubino.substack.com, link in the show notes below, and sign up for our free newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about in 2 weeks, John. You be well, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Kerry. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.